Hey guys, welcome back to another Puckham Productions review. And today I'm going to be starting another series review. If you remember the last time I did one, it was the Mario and Sonic video games series, and I did 6 episodes because that was the number of games in the series. This time, however, I'm going to be reviewing a film trilogy. And I'm going to be doing the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. So I'm just going to start off with Spider-Man, the 2002 original, with Tobey Maguire as the Webbed Wonder. So the movie begins, and it's basically Spider-Man's origin story. He basically shows Peter Parker as a simple, smart guy, who some people would call a nerd, but I wouldn't. I want to point that out. I wouldn't call someone a nerd. And I really hope I'm not called a nerd in the future. Anyways, he's with a school. He's on a school trip to the Oscorp lab where they're doing research on spiders. And when he's taking a picture of his friend, of the girl at school, Mary Jane Watson, who is his love interest, played by Kirsten Dunst, he gets bitten by one of these spiders, and it starts to alter his DNA, meaning that he can't see with his glasses on. He's much stronger, more muscly. And he's very athletic, and he can crawl along walls and shoot webs like that. And so basically, he starts to test out these new powers, and he impresses everyone at his school, even beating up a local bully named Flash Thompson. Uncle Ben tells Peter, with great power comes great responsibility. I think it means if you have power, you should go about you should think about how you use it. So Peter actually uses this new power to actually earn some money in the ring after graduating from high school. And even though he doesn't get the money he deserves because he didn't last the amount of time he required for the $3,000. That a criminal actually steals the money, but Peter does nothing to stop him because he doesn't think it's his problem. But then it turns out that and then afterwards Uncle Ben is killed, and Peter actually assumes that it's the man he let slide, like the one he didn't stop over at the wrestling arena. So he hunts him down and attacks him, ultimately causing his death. And we'll actually get onto the story about Uncle Ben's killer in part 3. So, ever since Ben's death, Peter became Spider-Man and started using his powers to help fight crime in New York City. Unfortunately, his actions caught the eye of J. Jonah Jameson, Spider-Man's worst ever critic. Ugh, if there's one Spider-Man character I hate the most, it's Jameson. I hate him so much. He's always criticising Spider-Man. He never notices the good he does. It's unbelievable. And it turns out Spider-Man has his first villain to face. Earlier in the film, Norman Osborn, played by Willem Dafoe, tested this performance-enhancing drug on himself, and it actually gave him a split personality problem. He basically gained an alter ego called the Green Goblin. And he took to that, and this new personality started raining havoc upon New York, attacking people. And they attacked Mary Jane and Harry Osborn, played by James Franco, who were actually dating in this movie. And, he bombs the balcony, but thankfully Peter saves MJ. And at some point later in the film, I think MJ actually starts to fall in love with Spider-Man because when Spider-Man's hanging upside down and it's raining, she pulls down part of his mask and kisses him on the lips. I have to admit, it's one of the strangest kiss scenes I've seen, but I think it makes it all the more sweet. And then at one point in the movie, the Goblin goes after Peter's Aunt May. And then she ends up in the hospital. And then in the movie's finale, Peter is forced by the Goblin to choose between saving MJ and a bunch of school kids. but he manages to find a way to save both. Unfortunately, Goblin abducts him, and they have one last fight. And it's when Goblin threatens to kill Mary Jane again. It's when Spider-Man goes full on beast mode, and then just pummels him. He just pummels him and pummels him. But then Norman reveals it was him the whole time. But his Goblin persona actually activated the glider, hoping to impale Spider-Man from behind. But Spider-Man saw through this with that spider sense, jumped up, and Norman impaled himself, ultimately resulting in his death. Unfortunately, when Spider-Man brought Norman's body back home, Harry blamed Spider-Man for Norman's death. And after the funeral, Harry swore to himself that Spider-Man would pay. But Peter knew it wasn't his fault. It was Norman's fault because he killed himself. And then in the last few minutes of the film, MJ confesses her love for Peter, but Peter just puts her in the friend zone. And I'm sure we'll find out more about that in Spider-Man 2, which will be the next video that I do. Anyway, so the film it's an amazing superhero movie, and it's good, and it's brilliant for anybody who's just getting introduced to Spider-Man, because it'll show him his origin story, it'll show him his arch enemy, the Green Goblin, and it'll teach him about his life, how he became Spider-Man. And it's just a good film. It's just a great film overall. So next video I'll be doing Spider-Man 2, which is the film that came out 2 years after this one. Spider-Man came out in 2002, by the way. I have to say, I think one of the most emotional moments of the film was when Goblin forced Spider-Man to choose between MJ and the kids. Thankfully, Spidey found a way to save them both. And I think another emotional moment is when MJ actually confesses her love for Peter at the end of the film, but then just Peter puts him in the friend zone. Also, who came up with the word friend zone? I'd really like to know that. Anyway, so there you have it. There's my review of Spider-Man. I'm looking forward to reviewing Spider-Man 2 in the next episode of this series. So join me next time when I'll be looking at Spider-Man 2. See you later.